Well, just to say, an incredible show the other night at the Memo, which included many of the people involved in the album on stage with you. And I'm guessing that wouldn't have been easy to coordinate to get as many of them as possible all available on the one night, seeing as they all have other things going on.
And that's exactly right. And the stars aligned for us on Saturday night, and everyone was free to perform, which was great. So I think we had 10 people on stage when we were at our maximum. And it is hard to coordinate so many people, you know, especially after COVID, when the gigs are sort of coming back and people are shifting things around just to, you know, be able to help you out or be part of the show.
I would say this is probably the most musically diverse of all your solo records to date. Lots of variation in sounds and instrumentation, on top of the fact that you've handed over lead vocal duties on some tracks. Was mixing things up like that something you were really intent on doing this time?
Definitely. It was my way of, I guess, creating a compilation or a playlist, you know, a way of making a record similar to how we listen to music these days. A lot of people, I guess, stream, and consequently you have a variety of what you're sort of listening to. And I tried to create something like an early Tarantino soundtrack where there's lots of sonic surprises and diversity. So you're onto something there. That's what I was trying to achieve. And I came pretty close, I thought. Different vocalists, of course, had to be involved to do that as well. So I cast the net far and wide in terms of not only the band but singers as well. And I asked people who I'd never met before if they would be involved. But, you know, it's a bit difficult not being able to sort of guarantee huge amounts of money or anything like that. It was more the experience. So there was a couple of youngsters that didn't get back to me, but that's all right.
So you actually did go in with a wish list of people you wanted to include there.
Look, it kept on getting bigger and broader. And I think Shane was a little reluctant. He said, look, you want to make a record with your name, but you want to have, you know, other people singing the songs, you know, maybe a few, but maybe not as many as I was hoping for, but that's all right. And, you know, Shane and I often have these little sort of arm wrestles and discussions and disagreements, but no, it worked out okay. I think with the instrumental, at least 3 lead singers on other tracks, there's enough diversity in there. So yeah, look, I'm really happy with it. I say that if recordings exceed my expectations, I can't ask for anything more, and I think that's exactly what this record has done, and also each of the tracks has done as well. It's better than what I was expecting, so I'm really happy.
So once you had your singers in place, people that had agreed to do the job, how did the selection process go, allocating which songs to which singers?
That was pretty straightforward. I've always liked Rebecca Barnard's voice, and I thought she could do a great job of feeling kind of blue. And it's a song that comes from a female's perspective as well. So Romy, I wanted her to do, the loudest track on the record. Romy can sing with a lot of grace, but also a lot of gusto, and she cuts through the chaos that we have at the end of that song. So she was a perfect fit. I met Romy a few years ago. She sings in a band called RBG, and we were doing 16 Lovers Lane up in Sydney, which was a go-betweens gathering. It was wonderful to meet her, and I've always been impressed by the way she delivers songs. Gareth Lydiard, as soon as I wrote that song, I heard his voice in there, so I pestered him until he came to the party. And the interesting thing about Gareth, and what I liked about his approach, was he had to change things to make it work for him to feel comfortable in that place. And I think as singers, I mean, we can all sing, and we can all sing other people's songs, but to feel some sort of ownership, or to feel genuine, you have to maybe sort of change things up a bit, and Gareth did exactly that. So it was wonderful to have him. He's got one of those voices that, oh my God, it sounds like he's swallowed a diesel engine, or he's eating a chicken sandwich and drinking a beer, trying to sing a song at the same time. He sort of mangles and mumbles words, and there's a beautiful musicality to that, which and plus he's a great writer. I don't know if you're familiar with his solo record, Strange Tourist, but far out. As soon as I heard that, I thought he'd ruined it for the rest of us, because it's so dense and so well written and well crafted. There's just an abundance of lyrical ideas in there, and it really affected me, that album.
But the two of you singing together on that track is it's a wonderful blend of rough and smooth, for want of a better word. You blend together.
I know.
Beautifully.
He sort of makes me sound like a private schoolboy or something. The way his voice is so, gruff and gravelly. But it depends who you ask whether it works or not. Graham Lee thought, what are you still doing there? Take your voice out, just have Gareth. But Gareth was insistent that the two of us were in there. So we just went with his idea, and I was happy to be there as a backing singer, I guess.
Now, that was the only song on the album that's credited as a co-write. What was Gareth's extent of songwriting contribution to that song?
Well, as I said before, he had to change some of the words to make it comfortable for him to sing, and to sing with a certain amount of genuineness. And so it was hard to tell what percentage, but he certainly changed some of the verses to fit in with the character that he had sort of come across on the street. Like I'd written it from the perspective of finding someone who was of my vintage and who'd struggled through, some sort of economic distress, and he'd sort of lost his family and friends and found himself on the street. Whereas Gareth's guy was more, younger chap who was, probably dabbling a bit too much in this and that, and was a bit more sort of rough and ready, where my guy was a bit more sort of defeated. So it's an interesting tale, because what actually happened was true to an extent, and it happened to me one afternoon when I was staying in the city, and I was dressed up a bit, and I was crossing, I think it was Spencer Street, across from Southern Cross Station with my partner, and this guy was bouncing across the road and kind of brushed into me, and as he did that, he said, "Give the man a coin, you rich dogs." And I thought, wow, one, what an assumption to make, but two, how poetic. So I took that with me, and I crossed the street, and sure enough, there was a guy sitting there, with one of those cardboard signs and a paper cup. And I don't know about you, but whenever I see anyone on the street, I just give them a few coins. So I just think, if it's gotten this bad, I don't care if, what all the other sort of myth makers say. I just think this is a desperate person. Have some money, find something to eat, whatever. Do whatever you need to do with that money, because you're in a dreadful situation. So, look, that's where the song seed came from, that actual moment. And I guess I might have come home that night, or it stayed with me anyway, and obviously had a huge effect, and turned into a song.
Back to Feeling Kind of Blue, the song with Rebecca singing. I noticed that you did mention you wrote that song with a woman's voice in mind. Was that singer always going to be Rebecca?
I'm not sure. Actually, the first person I thought of, because I'd been doing some shows with Lindy Morrison.
Oh, yes, yeah.
And I thought she'd had a book written about her by Tracy Thorne. And I guess Tracy was possibly in the back of my mind. Not that I've met Tracy, but I thought wow, just imagine having Tracy Thorn sing this. How great would that be? I used to really love the Marine Girls and their first album when I was a teenager, and there's a couple of songs on there that the tone of her voice is unbelievable, and I guess all that sort of analog recording back then, it's so warm and wonderful, and I thought, wow, I'll get her to sing it. I wonder if she would even contemplate the idea. So I asked Lindy to ask her, and she said essentially that she gets asked a lot, and she's, rather than toy with us, she's just going to say no. So that was out of the picture, and then I thought, well, I've got to ask Rebecca. Plus, Rebecca lives with Shane, and that's where I was doing my recording, and I sometimes hear Rebecca singing without amplification, and, you know, there's something really sort of beautiful, a little sort of world-weary in her vocal delivery I like. So I thought she was a good choice too.
Yeah. Oh, as you said before, it was a perfect match indeed. Not your first time in the studio with Shane O'Mara at the helm in the production chair. He did Sparrow and Swan for you as well. What does Shane bring to the table for you as a producer that makes him a great match for you? I
think Shane is just one of those guys who's incredibly positive and loves music and gets excited by it still. You know, we've been working on a few albums over the course of time, and we know each other really well. So whenever I'd have a left-of-centre, wild and wacky idea, he wouldn't balk at the idea. He'd go, yeah, let's try it. Let's, for sure. Let's give it a go. Because why be left wondering if that would work or not? So that's one of the great things about him. And plus he tolerates me, and I can be a bit short of temper and losing my patience. And look, we've taught together for so long, and I think he's got some sort of respect for how I go about things, and that's the great thing. I mean, you never really find out with sort of band members sometimes. There's so many sort of alpha males, and it's sort of, you know, difficult to make decisions because it's supposed to be, you know, democratic, whereas with Shane and I, there's only the two of us, and it's a matter of adjusting things minutely. You know, we generally agree on most things. There might be, you know, okay, can you please turn your guitar down because now it's louder than my voice? You know, that sort of discussion. Or I think we need to bring an acoustic guitar in here. It's sort of lacking body or so forth. So, and Shane has the ability to play numerous guitars on the same track and still make it sound wonderful and not too samey. Because he's been playing for such a long time, he's got a VCA sort of background as a classical guitarist, and he's just filled to the brim with music. I really like working with him.
Hey, has it been kind of liberating for you?
And plus, he could communicate to drummers.
Oh, well,
which is often hard for me.
Has it been somewhat liberating for you now being able to write songs off your own bat again after writing songs to order for other people for the last couple of years with Song Gifts?
Well, I've got to admit that there's a couple of late Song Gifts inclusions on here.
Yes, there are.
Simply because I grew very fond of them. Part of my story became intertwined in theirs, and I felt a sense of ownership. So they were included on the record. Liberating, you know what? For a period of time, I just thought, I am never going to write another song again. It's just going to be Song Gifts for the rest of my life. It was almost like I'd forgotten how to. And then I just had to, you know, let them come. It's a mysterious process where you know, sitting at the kitchen table, and you might have, well, I often sit around with a knockabout nylon string guitar, which I bought in an op shop for $40, and I'll sit at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and just be fiddling around, and then an idea lands in my lap. And really, it's as simple as that. It drifts through the air, lands in your lap and you start. And from that seed, you don't stop. Well, I don't. This is my new process. I don't stop until I've finished, because if I do, it becomes really laborious, and I don't like working and going over things too much. It has to come, very sort of cathartically and spontaneously. So that's how I sort of go about working. And it's almost like, the pen's in someone else's hand, because the ideas just come so quickly when you start in that situation. Song Gifts was more creating a template for the songs and asking people a variety of questions, as you know, John. So I had to, I guess, get a lot of information from people. Some people weren't as forthcoming, but the more information I have, the easier it is for me to write a song and edit and whittle it down and shape it. So, look, it has been liberating. It was just a relief to know that I could still write songs after so many song gifts.
It's interesting you do mention a new approach to your songwriting. So Song Gifts has altered the way you tackle the whole procedure now. I
think it created a process for me. I didn't think I really had one before, and because I had deadlines to meet and there'd be several songs to write in a week, I had to do it fairly efficiently and, effectively as possible. So I had this process. I had a process of where I would write as much as possible, have my guitar, find, a chord progression. I always said to people that it would be a simple 3 or 4 chords song and as much information as I could fit in about whoever you wanted me to write about. So, that they were never going to be sort of Beach Boys masterpieces, but it was, for me, it was a really enjoyable thing to do, and certainly worked on honing my craft. It was great.
One of the songs that did come from Song Gifts and finds its way on this album is Standing Next to David. It's one of my favourite tracks off the record. Just for our listeners, can you talk us through that one?
Yeah, so there was a chap in the UK, his name was Mike Brown, and he was a massive Triffids fan, and he wanted a song for his wife Angie. But the email that he sent me, about 3/4 of it was talking about his love of the Triffids and Born Sandy Devotional and of David McComb. And then the last quarter of the email was about his wife and how they met and so forth. So I thought, how am I going to do this? There's so much here about David and this bits and pieces about Angie. And I thought, well, I'm just going to simply segue from one to the other and leave that, that piece of sort of mystery. And what the hell is going on here? So it might be a bit confusing to some listeners, but it's essentially about the adoration and love you have for a singer or a musician, and that you have for the real love you have for your partner. And I guess my memories, again, sort of intertwined with his. So it's a real joy to sing that song. And obviously it sort of brings back lots of memories for myself as well. And the song ends up with them, as they said, in the email, they were dreaming of coming out to Australia and driving the Nullarbor Plain and seeing the Swan River and following in the footsteps of the Triffids. So maybe one day they will.
I saw in your notes that the song My Friend Too was a song that you wrote after seeing the documentary on David as well, so I'm assuming there's a connection to David there in that song?
Yeah, look, have you seen the film?
I have, yeah.
For me, it brought back so many memories, and I guess the editing process was difficult for them. And, as someone who was interviewed, I didn't get a say into what they were going to actually put in there from me. But it felt to me as I walked away that, wow, you kind of picked the only kind of negative thing I've said about my relationship with David, and it's bang there in the film. I don't get to say much, but that's there. And I felt, feel great about that. And I also brought back memories about the day that he passed, and my sort of disappointment in some people for not getting in contact with me. It's all a bit of a blur, I've got to say. But that moment that I wrote that song, it was written with, I guess, a sense of betrayal and bitterness and FU. Just, I don't know. I felt let down.
Yeah.
So that's where that comes from.
And Romy expressed that beautifully in her vocals on that track too.
I love, Romy has got, as I said, that incredible voice that she can just deliver songs. She sings other people's songs well, and she's quite comfortable with that as well. We had she got a bit of direction from me in the studio, but really there wasn't much to do apart from, let's give this a bit more grit here, and that was it. Or can we try? So I thought, as you do in the studio, just a little bit of a chat here and there, and try and shape the song or that sort of vocal performance as best you can, so it sits in the track well. And yeah, look, she sings through chaos, and that's what I like about her.
Yeah. And one of the standout features for me on the sound of the record are the little extras here and there, the addition of strings, Jack Howard's horn parts, just little subtle additives, not overdone, just I guess beautifully added brushstrokes, if you like. I think I heard you describe somewhere. I think you might have even mentioned it earlier. We were speaking that you wanted an album of sonic surprises. Was that the type of thing you were referring to?
Absolutely, and I think it's important, given that I do know so many people now in Melbourne who do those sorts of things. Why not ask them if they're available to sort of help out? I mean, it's, I've done the Song Gifts record, which was a double album, which is very sparse. This was time to make it a bit more sort of orchestrated, I suppose, and have those elements. And I met Jack Howard a few years back. I mean, Susan's had played with Hunters and Collectors a few times, but Jack and I were working on Scott Walker shows, as was Shane Riley, the pedal steel player who arranged the strings on the record. Shane and I have a love for Angela Morley, who arranged Scott Walker's material, really sort of interesting melodic lines that she has in the background, and that's what I was going for as well. There's the opportunity to add more melody to the songs and just little bits here and there to make it more colourful. I thought that was really important. That's what I was going for.
Yeah. And I believe you became quite a handy jingle bells player along the way as well.
My bells, I'm very proud of my bells. I think they're the best sounding bells in town, and they cost me $5 or $10 or something in a music shop. But I have 2 sets, and I will not sell them to our drummer. He's not getting his hands on them. Once it started, we couldn't stop. Bells are really good on this track. What about adding bells? But Shane was just as bad as me, and it would be like, no, I want bells through the entire song, just in the background, just wave them around the mic, blah, blah, blah. So because they're so different sonically as well, they just sit well in a space that isn't occupied by anything else, because they're so shimmery. There's nothing else that they clash with. I don't know. I like snow, I like bells, what can I say?
And the track Violets and Cherry Blossoms, I saw you describe that as Lost in Space meets lounge jazz. Can you expand on that one for us? Well,
there's an episode of Lost in Space where an alien comes up to the spacecraft, and she is entirely green, and she's trying to mesmerize Dr. Smith, and she sings to him, "Dr. Smith, come out to play." And for some reason, Violets and Cherry Blossoms reminds me of that. Now, it could just be me, but it does sound a bit sort of loungy to me. We probably should have put some vibes on there or something, but there's certainly some different chords, more sort of jazz-oriented chords that I came up with. So I guess that's what I meant by that. I was just trying to be colourful and clever.
On the title of that song, and on that note, I've been listening to you a lot lately, and I've noticed a few references to plant life and trees and flowers in your songs, in your lyrics. Are you a bit of a gardener?
Look, I try to be. I'm not very good at it. I tend to assist my mother in the garden with carrying stuff, but I don't know much about plants myself. My mum was a biology teacher, so I grew up on an orchard. I live in a Dandenong, so I'm looking out the window and all I see is green. There's tree ferns and there's eucalypts, and there's more tree ferns and there's more eucalypts. So that's what my environment is like, and that's pretty much my hood. When I was singing Violet's Cherry Blossoms, that's what I was seeing, and snowflowers on the glade. Maybe not snowflowers, I don't know what they were called, but they were little pretty white, little bluebell-looking things, but white in colour. So I don't want to tell you too much about that song in terms of what is at the core of it, simply because it's very personal, might be on the bleak side, but it certainly doesn't come across that way. So it is what you want it to be. As everyone says, once you've released a song into the world, people interpret it as they do, and that's what it becomes.
Exactly.
So I don't want to stamp anything definite on it.
One song with an extraordinary story is Sweet Edie. Can you talk us through that one?
That story is incredible, and it's true, and it's about my partner's auntie, who was a single mother in the 60s, and she was a tram connie, and she fell in love with the tram driver, who happened to be married. And believe it or not, he had some sort of strict religious beliefs, but in the end they had an affair. She fell pregnant. He wouldn't leave his wife, and she was so ashamed that she spent her pregnancy wearing her tram conductor's winter coat 24/7, so no one could see that she was pregnant. And she was still living with her parents at the time and some siblings, and no one knew that she was having a baby until the day she gave birth. And I found that story so crushing, to be so lonesome that you couldn't share that, not even with your family. Obviously it affected me. We were driving up to Echuca, and I was in the back seat, and the story unfolded, and I was just, I guess, pumping for more information about Edie and what had happened. I'd met her a couple of times before she'd passed, and she was a really colourful character, really funny. But it was her sister who told me more about it, and I found it extraordinary.
It is an amazing tale. It certainly is. Yeah. Are any of the songs that use the guest singers, did you record any of them yourself to begin with, or it was they were always going to be allocated?
I did sort of like demo-like recordings of them, but nothing. Once we got into the studio for real, I didn't sing any of those songs. And there's been a couple of people who said, "Oh, I'd like to hear me sing that one," or so forth. But it'll come. I'm going up to Sydney in September, and I can't afford to take everyone. So I think roaming overseas anyway. So I'll be singing My Friend Too on occasions, and maybe when I come back and do a few more shows, I might sing sort of Sweet Edie down here. We'll see.
Yeah, I did notice this morning the Sydney date.
In terms of Gareth's song, the Sydney date is now September the 3rd. up at the Great Club in Marrickville. So Shane and Graham are coming up, and as I said, I play with Lindy Morrison on occasion, so she'll be joining us on the drums. And Peter Milton Walsh lives up in Sydney. Jessica Black from Jep and Dep is going to sing some BVs and probably take on Rebecca's song. So I'll try and make it as interesting and colourful as it was in Melbourne.
And beyond that, are you looking to any more shows down here, or going further north even?
We've finally locked in a show north of the river. We're playing at the Thornbury Theatre on
awesome.
August the 5th, Friday, August the 5th. So once we finished the show at Memo, the ensemble demanded that we at least do one more show, because this is just so ridiculous, only having the one show. It was very difficult to get a place north side for some reason, and I think it had something to do with the fact that I have a very responsible audience who don't drink up enough and make a huge profit for the venue over the bar. So things like that. You're reminded of every now and again that this industry relies on the sale of alcohol for it to be successful and financial.
Very true. So what's the status of Song Gifts now? With obviously it was a project born in lockdown, and now that we're not in lockdown, are you still open for business there, or are you putting that one aside for a while?
Yeah. No, I still write them. Every couple of weeks one will float through, and I'll write. The great thing about them, though, I must say, is, although I've said that they're going to be really sort of simple songs, quite often there's like a little melodic line or a chord progression that I haven't done before, and I think, well, there's nothing stopping me from doing that again and taking it on to another song.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
I mean, that's been great about it as well. And there's little snippets of music on Searching for the Heart of It All that have come from that place as well.
Hey, Rob, congratulations on a beautiful record, and I'm still buzzing from the other night. It was a fantastic show down at the Memo, and best of luck with the shows coming up. And, yeah.
Thanks very much, John. Thanks for having me on.
Always a pleasure to talk to you.
Good to see some Casey folk there.
Yes, yeah.
Good on you. Thank you.
Cheers, Rob.
Cheers.